You're listening to Surviving and Thriving with Renisha, a podcast about life, mental health, and personal growth. Here I talk about my journey living with borderline personality disorder, depression, and anxiety, and how I'm learning to love myself despite it. Let's get into it. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. I have not been having an easy time. And so I really just want to talk a little bit about how I'm feeling right now, the things that I'm struggling with. Before I do that, I just want to say if for whatever reason there are issues with the audio or like I connection issues, if the video that I'm making to correspond with this podcast episode is laggy, I am so sorry. I have really been struggling on the tech side as well. I just literally spent 30 minutes trying to figure out why Riverside wasn't recording properly, and yeah, so I do this as a hobby. It's not a job, and I don't have any support with this podcast, which is why I don't really push myself too hard if I'm not consistent, because I am not an audio engineer. I don't know anything about audio. And so whenever there are tech issues, I literally, if I can't figure it out on my own, then there's just nothing I can do. And I've used so many different remote recording tools, Zoom, I'm using Riverside, all of those things. And I just continue to run into issues. So I'm really hoping somehow it gets worked out. But yeah, I'm here. So let's just talk. I'm actually going to take this off because I'm really hot. But anyway, this is going to be a really casual, candid episode. I really want this to be really raw. I think I want that for most of my episodes, but I think that lately I've been really pushing myself to try to put content out that is uplifting or encouraging. And I want to make sure that in doing so, I'm not also, bypassing my own very real experiences and emotions, because I think that my ultimate goal with everything that I put out is to make sure others know that they're not alone. And, it can be really easy online and on social media to not want to be vulnerable and not really want to show the truth or the reality of situations and want to paint this pretty picture. When in reality, healing and recovery and mental health and life in general, it's not always rainbow and sunshine. It's not always pretty. And I want to make sure that I'm being really honest. And so right now, I have been struggling with my mental health for especially I would say the past week or so. I'm finding that I feel very lonely, and chronic loneliness is something that I've struggled with my entire life, and it confuses people who don't share the same experiences of having mental health issues or being a trauma survivor or anything like that. I think it can be confusing for them because they might look at my life, they might see that I have a husband, I have a son, I seem to have supportive people in my life, and they might wonder what do you mean? What do you mean you're lonely? Um and that, coupled with the fact that I have a history and a habit of isolating and being really antisocial, and I have really bad social anxiety as well. So I keep to myself a lot. But what I've really, really been sitting with, I think recently, is I'm angry a lot. And anger, as I mentioned in my last episode, is something I've been continuously working on since the beginning of my recovery. But I'm angry a lot because I really do desire to have connections with people, but I've been so disappointed by people throughout my entire life that it's so hard at this stage of my life, no matter how much shadow work or inner work or healing work I do, to fully allow myself to trust people and be vulnerable. And what's more frustrating is that when I push myself to do so, if I, um, you know, it's really frustrating that I can push myself to do so and then still end up being disappointed. And I'm really having a hard time with the practice of separating the outcome from my own like character and my own willingness to continue to keep my heart space open and to continue to be vulnerable and to try to connect with people and to still continue to love people despite, all of the disappointments. And that's hard for me. Um because I know I mention this like every single time, but I have a really strong sense of justice. And so it's hard for me to accept that in being vulnerable and putting myself out there, I can pretty much expect to be disappointed because that's just part of life, and not everyone is doing the work. Not everyone is doing the inner work that they need to be doing. So it's like it doesn't matter how much work I'm doing if the people around me aren't doing that, then there's always going to be, a clash. There's always going to be a misalignment, a misunderstanding, and that's part of life. But I think I've become like so sensitive to that because I have spent so much time in my own energy. So now it's like, I'm trying to think of like a really good way to say this, but it's almost like once I do allow myself to let my guard down and connect with people and I end up disappointed, it's not only like reinforcing these negative core beliefs that I've been working so hard to fight against, but it's also reminding me that no matter how much I do this work, this is a risk that I'm going to take in this lifetime as long as I'm connecting with other people because we're all on different paths, right? Um, and I want to stay firm in my boundaries, but I sometimes literally feel, and I know this is not true, so I just want to put that out there, but I sometimes feel like if I'm going to be connected to other people, I have to just accept disappointment. And I just know that that's not true. I know that I have over the past year, especially been really blessed with really, really good connections that feel good for me. But at the same time, people are people and people aren't perfect. People are flawed. And I'm having a hard time giving grace to people. And I think part of it too is because I am intentionally seeking out spaces and community of people who claim to be healers, to claim to be on their own journeys, their own like healing or spiritual journeys, are community organizers of some kind. Like I mentioned, that I've been connecting with and supporting and working with, collaborating with nonprofit organizations, for example. And it's so beyond disappointing, likely because maybe I hold a lot of these people in these spaces to higher standards. I'm not sure. But it's been so disappointing to see that even in spaces that were designed for people to feel safe, there's still the possibility that you can be disappointed. And that's something that I'm trying to come to terms with. So things that have been really coming up for me that's just been bringing out a lot of frustration is that people can really genuinely have like your best interest at heart and want to do good by you, but they can only they can only support you, they can only really show up for you as far as they have been willing to show up for themselves. So I know I mentioned relationships before, but I have a pattern of connecting with people who are either really emotionally volatile like myself or like avoidant. And so I've really been so grateful for people coming in that are trying to or striving to or showing a balance of that. But um, obviously, I'm still connected and connecting with people who aren't quite there, and like I have grace for them because I have BPD and I'm continuously working on emotion regulation. I still have episodes sometimes. I still struggle with that. I've been struggling with my moods a lot this week, actually. But, it's hard for me sometimes to have grace for people and understand that they can really only meet me where they're at, right? Like they can't show up for me and be emotionally available and have that emotional intelligence that I feel like I really need in any type of connection if they haven't done that work for themselves. Like I can't be asking for things from people that they haven't done for themselves. And that's been tough. And I think another thing too is in a lot of these healing communities and healing spaces, I am unfortunately seeing people who are leading from this place of ego. And, it takes a lot for me to go out. It does. And I feel like for the past couple of months, I have tried really hard to put myself back out there only to feel disappointed, only to feel like something's off, the energy's off. And it's almost like I still don't feel comfortable fully showing up as myself because of it. And I have really just been trying to sit with whether that's coming from something inside of me and I'm just projecting because it's hard for me to know because I have BPD, I have social anxiety, and I'm still healing from these things. Or if it's the environment, the energies and people around me. If I find that like when I'm in my own energy, I feel fine, then I really have to question those around me. And so I've been really struggling with that, like because there's a part of me that like understands that there are people in my life that aren't really fully aligned. And I don't necessarily feel like everyone in my life has to be fully aligned because I feel like for those who aren't, there's always something to learn. And that's what we're here to do. So I don't want to be one of those people that's like, you have to be just like me. We have to be exactly the same energy. I don't believe that. I actually really don't believe that. I know a lot of people in the spiritual community um, talk a lot about that. Like you need to be on the same vibration or whatever. I don't believe that. I think that whoever is calling to our life, whether they bring chaos and drama or whether they bring peace, it's for a reason. Like you're supposed to learn something from all of these interactions. But I think for me, I have historically had an issue with like letting go of connections when I know intuitively that it's time to let go. Um, and I think that I really push people around me to change or to grow or to expand their mind in whatever way I can. And I'm really struggling with understanding now and just allowing myself to let people grow on their own terms in their own time. And whatever path that leads them down, whether it's the same or different or aligned or not aligned, just having grace with them and understanding that we're all different. And I find that difficult because it makes me feel like I'm not ever going to be able to have a long-term connection with anyone, friends, romantic, anyone, because I I have that catalyst energy where I feel like I'm always pushing people and I'm trying to stop doing it, but I also kind of feel like it's just part of who I am. Um and so lately I've been really struggling with loneliness because I know that if you get to know me, I'm one of those people that you will either really vibe with and like really love, or you'll be so uncomfortable and really not want to be around me. Like it's either or. I feel like I'm very hot or cold. I'm that type of person. People either really vibe with me or they really, really don't. Um, and I feel like in the spaces where people are still pushing back on their own inner work, I can't connect with those people. But then in the same time, there are some things that I don't know how to describe this. I just feel like in general, across the board, no matter what side of the spectrum you're on, there's very heavy this or that, black or white thinking. There's not enough nuance for me. And so I feel like, where do I fit? Like I feel very lost a lot of times because um right now I live in a city that honestly feels very cliquey, and it feels really hard to be a multifaceted, multidimensional person, a complex person in the city that I live, because it feels like I have to choose something and stick to it in order to be in a community. And I know some of this is in my head, but also it's been my experience here. Um, and I find it difficult to really feel comfortable, especially with like my social anxiety, showing up as my full self. Um, because something I say will inevitably make the people in the space uncomfortable. I think our culture also, people want to be in agreement with everyone they're around now. It's like you cannot be friends with someone and engage in discourse that could potentially challenge them, and that's not who I am. Like I want us to push each other to expand our minds and grow. And if people nowadays are describing like friendships and aligned relationships and aligned connections as someone who thinks just like they do, someone who acts just like they do. And I don't vibe with that. And I think that I often come across as a very disagreeable person because of that, because I want to challenge you. I want you to really consider and question everything you think you know about life, because that's what I'm always doing. And I am craving connections with people who are curious in that way. And, I find people like that, but then in the same lane, it's like I can sense this like discomfort if I do say something that maybe doesn't align with where they're at or they don't agree with. And it's like, can we have spaces where we can have discourse that we don't necessarily 100% align or agree on, and allow it to be a conversation that could potentially lead to more growth, more understanding, more acceptance? Or do we absolutely have to be surrounded by people who are exactly like us and think like us and share the same values as us? Because if that's the case, then where do I fit in all of this? Like my beliefs and my values and everything, they're always shifting. And for a long time I really attributed that to like my mental health and just having a mood disorder, personality disorder. Like I'm always changing as a person. But I'm also starting to accept that I'm just that type of person. Like every day I might be presented with information that I never considered. And so I'm always open to expanding my mind and shifting my thoughts and perspectives based off of the information I'm receiving, right? And I don't understand what it's like to be a fixed person. I don't. My values and my beliefs and my opinions and my views, they have always shifted ever since I was young. And when I sit and reflect lately, I've been considering, is that a character flaw? Am I just an inconsistent person? And, maybe part of it is that. And I think another part of it is just I'm an open minded person. Like I enjoy something that makes me shift my perspective. I enjoy that. I really do. And the downside of that is loneliness, because I often feel like there's not one box for me. There's not one place where I belong. So that's been coming up a lot for me. Some examples of that has been showing up is, like I mentioned, community spaces. I've been trying to get out into community spaces. It's something that I've been mentioning. Um, and I have really been struggling with this because a lot of the spaces I've been drawn to are healing spaces. Some of these spaces, in my opinion, are very, like, it adapts a very Western, modern mindset, but then it adapts like ancient wisdoms from a bunch of different cultures. And, the things that people share in these spaces and the advice they give, lots of advice around like mindfulness, meditation, yoga, all these great things that are great for you, right? But then I feel like in these spaces, which are very whitewashed, to be frank, there's a lack of discourse about like the real challenges that different marginalized groups face, right? It's like if you're in those spaces, it's all like kumbaya, everyone's equal, we're all the same. But being equal and, you know, living an equitable experience aren't the same. Like we can all acknowledge that we're all the same, but if we're also not acknowledging that even though we know that we're all the same, that the world is not treating us all the same, we're not all afforded the same opportunities, we don't all have the same experiences. If we're not acknowledging those things, we're not acknowledging systemic oppression or injustice in conversations in these spaces, and I don't feel comfortable in these spaces, right? Because I can have the mindset of like, you're right. Like I can see that bigger picture, that bigger kumbaya. We're all the same. We're all born the same. We're all just humans. We're all the human race. But at the same time, I can be realistic and see the ways in which different groups have been disenfranchised and need support. And so there's that push and pull in those spaces. And then I go to spaces that are centering BIPOC people. And, I work for organizations like that. And then there's like this other rhetoric that I feel uncomfortable with. Like um, I'm a Black woman, so I've often felt like in a lot of Black spaces, sometimes we can be really close to allies and people from other backgrounds who want to learn more, want to understand, and want to help. And I don't vibe with that either. I've been in interracial relationships, for example, and I feel like oftentimes I have my own Blackness into question because of that, right? Because like I said, I can see beyond all of this, all of these like labels and systems that we put in place, but I can also see the impact of all of these things at the same time, right? So it's like that push and pull again. I also am just interested in things that are not stereotypical for someone who grew up like me either. So then that's a whole nother thing too, where it feels like I'm having to overcompensate in spaces like that. And then I have been in spaces that are purely clinical when it comes to talking about mental health. It's all make sure you have a diagnosis, make sure you see a doctor, make sure you're, trying or checking out medications, make sure you're doing everything your therapist tells you to do. I've been in spaces like that. And then on the flip side of that, I've been in spaces where it's like, you know, F big pharma, everything is connected, everything is spiritual. You need to either pray or you need to meditate. You need to find enlightenment. You need to do ayahuasca. You need, like, it's just this or that or this or that. And I'm the type of person that I'm just here witnessing all of it, open to all of it. I will try anything, I will consider everything, and I will question everything. And so being in all these different spaces where it's kind of like this or that or this, it leaves me feeling so out of place because in my mind, I'm always like, why can't it be all of it? You know? And I have like these existential rants like I'm having now where I'm like, why does it have to be religion or science? Why can't it be religion and science? Why can't it be both? You know, why does it have to be clinical or spiritual? Why can't it be both? You know, what if we all just have really different ways of understanding the same things? What if we have different labels for the same things? I don't know. These are the types of questions I'm asking consistently, and because I'm like that, I feel lost a lot of the times because I'm like, I'm not willing to stick to one thing or to choose one thing. And I feel like to be a part of a community nowadays, because I don't have like a close knit family, I don't come from that. So without community, I don't really feel like I have much. Like I have my husband and I have my son, but I don't like have a home base where I can really come um talk about what I'm going through in my mental health because when it comes to my mental health, I'm not with a partner who has these issues. And, my son is neurodivergent, very young. So, like, it's a lot of educating, and so I often feel like I need a space where I can talk about these things. And this podcast was born from that need. But also, like, it's hard to go into these spaces where, people are telling me, yeah, this is a great space for that. Like, yeah, you can be vulnerable here. Yeah, you can make great connections here. I make great friendships here. And then I ultimately end up feeling back in that place because I I I can't do it this or that. I have to be questioning everything. And so I don't know if that makes sense, but that's where I've been at lately with connections. And so I think for me, my strategy has been to try to just connect with people individually. But then the issue with that is that people are busy. It's really hard um to connect with people as an adult. It's so hard because we're all struggling under capitalism to be focused on output and what we're producing in our projects because we have to make money. We have to make money to survive. And so it can be really tough. It can be really tough if you're trying to make new connections, new friendships, because I feel that like adult friendships also just move a lot slower. I really miss the times lately when I was a child and like I knew when I went to school, I had like a home base. Like I had a group of people that would be waiting for me and we would just talk about all the stupid things we cared about. And now I don't feel like I have that. I don't feel like I have that. I feel like all of the connections I am making, as great as they are, it's just check-ins. It's just what you been up to, how you feeling, and that's needed. That's necessary, and it's for people who don't have that. Like I am so grateful because I have spent so much of my life where I didn't even have that. But at the same time, like I really crave community to share my life with. Like I don't want to just be checking in with people. I want you to be part of it. Like, what are we going to do together? Like, can we can we build community where we're communal, where we're actually communal, where we're a part of each other's day-to-day lives? Because I don't have that. I don't have that with family. I don't live near any family. I'm not that close to my family. I've been working on rebuilding that. I really just have my husband, and I think, and I mentioned this, I don't like that we put all of our eggs in one basket in this culture where we like rely on our partner, our romantic partners to be everything for us because the society has really set us up in a way to where we don't really value friendships as much. We leave our families when we're young or relatively young, and then we're disconnected, and then we're just like catching each other up, so we're not really like sharing our lives with these people. And a lot of times we're like pushed to get married or get into a romantic relationship or a committed relationship with someone, and then that's the person we share our life with. But I just don't feel like we were ever meant to just be like with one person and just share our life with one person. Like we're supposed to be a community. We're supposed to share our life with all of like each other. And I think my theory is that that's part of the reason why we see a lot of the issues we see in terms of mental health. People are so lonely, and it's like we're just following each other on social media and we're engaging in these parasocial relationships now because we don't have that. We don't have that connection day to day, like maybe we're catching up with friends on the weekend or a couple times a month for brunch, but like we're not sharing our lives with people. um and I remember, I don't know what podcast it was or what I was listening to, but I remember them talking about how people are literally healthier and live longer if they have like these deep connections and different types of friendships, and they find this joy and support in from multiple different places. And so that's really been a goal of mine. But as I mentioned, I feel like I'm struggling to find places where I feel like I fit. And so there's a part of me that feels like there's some inner work that needs to be done with that, because I think some of these things are just really my own projections. They're just coming from my mind and they might not even be true. But I think another part of it is that, maybe we also acknowledge that some of these healing spaces aren't as inclusive and open as people might consider them to be. And I think if you are someone who holds community space to you, I think you have a responsibility to be making sure you're doing your inner work too. So you really are providing safe spaces for people. And I do feel like at some point I want to be someone who creates spaces for people, and I want to make sure those spaces are inclusive to people of all different backgrounds and values and belief systems. Because to me, diversity is more than just the color of your skin. It's, I want people who are disabled. I want people who are neurodivergent. I want everyone, regardless of your perspective, to feel welcomed in the space and not also feel like you have to be in agreement with everyone that's there. Like you all have to share the exact same belief systems, because I don't really see like a lot of growth from that. I think having boundaries and protecting your energy is necessary and needed, but I don't think that you do that by only being around people who are just like you or who think just like you. I think if you're only surrounding yourself with people who think just like you, that's more of a coping mechanism than really being vulnerable, in my opinion. um so yeah, I'm really like desperate to find communities and spaces where the curious people, those like weirdos like me who question everything, who believe everything is possible, who's consistently shifting their values and beliefs and perspectives. I want to find spaces like that. Um, and I think I have to really push myself beyond like this feeling of discomfort and the questioning and the, oh, what if this happens again? Because I have been so disappointed. And I think I am in a space where I have become really jaded with humanity as a whole. um when you have access to too much information, that happens, and I think a lot of us are probably feeling that with everything we're seeing, right? Probably all feeling just jaded with the world and humanity. But I'm trying my best not to let that stop me from continuing to go out into the world and put myself out there and to seek these types of connections. So yeah, I have a lot that I need to work on, because I often find too that when all of these thoughts and all of the questions and confusion, all of this is coming up for me, that the people closest to me bear the brunt of it, because then I pull back and I'm not trying to, but then I'm not as attentive to them or their needs. And I do that with family, I do that with my partner, and I really am continuously working on that. Just because people disappoint and let you down doesn't mean that you should close your heart or you should stop completely trying to connect with people, because we're all wired for connection. It's something we literally need to survive as humans. So I think, as uncomfortable and hard as it is, just continuing to be willing to put myself out there and to be patient and to give people grace, and to give myself grace too. Something I'm continuously working towards. So yeah. Um that was quite the rant. I don't know if this even made sense to anyone or if you'll resonate, but I really did just want to come on here and do a complete brain dump, because there's been so much in my mind lately, and it's been so hard to like really articulate everything that I've been feeling, and I feel like that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's like so many different tangents that I could take with that, and you'll have to excuse me because I have ADHD. So there's so many like different topics that I could branch off to more in depth when I'm talking about this, especially as it relates to community and community space holders and feeling safe and being open minded and encouraging discourse, encouraging people to, you know, challenge one another. I think we need to really look at and reframe what we mean when we say alignment. Does alignment mean same to you? Because to me, that's no different than like this colonized mindset that a lot of us are working really hard to unlearn, right? Like everything that we've been conditioned to believe under like colonialism is sameness. Like we need to be exactly the same, think the same, look the same to be valuable. And it's just not true. So if someone's not like on the same path as you, they maybe don't talk the same as you, they don't think the same as you, maybe they don't have the same values as you. Does that mean that person's less valuable than you? Like, what do you mean when you say alignment, right? If someone's directly causing harm to you, then I'm all for setting boundaries. That's something I always talk about. But it just I I am struggling with the idea of alignment because I try to give people grace and understand that there's something to learn from everyone. I think where we need to have discernment is when these people are in positions where they can potentially cause harm, right? Or if they are causing harm, that's to me that's very different than just someone who maybe has a different belief set than you. But yeah, I want to find spaces where people are actively working to be more understanding people, be more open-minded people. And if I can't find it, then maybe I'll create it. But that's where my mind is. And so I thank you for listening to this rant. I I don't know how like to describe my mental state right now. And so I think it's best if I do just come and just share what I'm thinking and make a video so you can kind of see like my wheels spinning as I'm talking, me struggling to articulate because that's real life. Like this is what I go through, you know? Like I have existential rants like at least 3 times a week. So it only makes sense for me to be really real and raw on this podcast and come here and spewing my thoughts. And I just want to also point out that everything that I say here, everything that has been said, could change. Like my everything that I'm saying right now, I could completely change my mind about in like a week. And let's stop demonizing people like that because yes, it could be connected to my mental health. It could. Yeah. But it also could be because I'm just a curious person and I am consistently trying to learn new ways to understand and make sense of like one another and the world. So there's that. I'll leave you guys with that. This is a long episode, but if you stuck it out till the end, I so appreciate you. Please subscribe to my podcast. Please follow me on Instagram at JustRereShop, on TikTok at JustRereShop. Um, and yeah, until next time, bye.